I'm guessing many of you are a little nervous right now. And I understand it. Donald Trump is going into the lion's den in front of one of the worst media organizations, two of the worst media lapdogs ever. And he'll be going up against a man who literally spent a week out of the office of the presidency, not undertaking his duties, where they're basically getting him to memorize one-liners and, I would argue, trying to get him to overwhelm Donald Trump with lies about the economy, the border, and so forth and so on. How do I know this, Mr. Producer? Because this is how Biden has always debated. This is his fourth run for the presidency. 4 times. He will say and do anything. The Hunter Biden laptop. He knew it was Hunter Biden's. They planted the letter, and yet he pointed to it. The media rallied around him. He was caught in 1988 in the Democrat primary, lying about his education, scholarships, grade point average, plagiarizing speeches from Robert Kennedy, Neil Kinnock. But then we had a media that held him to account, and he had to withdraw. But I watched his withdrawal speech the other day. Arrogant as hell. This is a man who takes responsibility for nothing. The horrors that he's created with an open border, the economic impoverishment of millions and millions of Americans, rampant crime in the streets. He takes responsibility for nothing. Oh, yes, convicted felon. This is what they've always wanted. So Biden's judge and Soros's prosecutor delivered. There are ways to deal with that, and I'm sure President Trump will. But the fact of the matter is, when the debate is said and done, the media will unleash the most aggressive, the most ubiquitous propaganda operation in American history. They will tell you that Donald Trump lied about this, that, and the other. To the extent Joe Biden lies, if they say anything, it'll be a slight misstatement. But they will one. If Joe Biden loses track, they'll say he won on substance. If Joe Biden does nothing but stands up, they'll say, see, he demonstrated he has the ability to be president. And there is no question in my mind that Joe Biden is drugged up for this, whether it's Adderall or Botox or B12 or whatever it is. Amphetamines? No question. Why wouldn't he? It's not illegal. They're dual-use drugs. Why wouldn't he? So this is all play. The entire environment of this debate was dictated by Joe Biden and CNN. CNN, remarkably, has not allowed any other news organization to watch the debate in the hall, to report on it. Not one. One reporter can literally hang out in the hallway, but that's it. And so the other news organizations are very upset about this. But that won't change their bottom line. Just remember what we're dealing with here. A media that pushed the Russia hoax collusion issue, participated in it. A media that refused to go down to the border to see what was actually taking place. And when they did, they lie about it. A media that regurgitates Biden's claims about the economy for the most part. And a media that spreads every lie to every disgruntled former employee, every reprobate, as if it's fact. Just look who's on CNN. Look at the Republicans who are on CNN. Look at Jake Tapper, his comments. Dana Bash, her comments. Jake Tapper calling Trump Hitler. Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, and the rest. The conga line of reprobates at CNN, the rest of them. They never played Donald Trump's victory speech when he won the Republican primary. They are constantly cutting off his speeches. Constantly. And the reason they give is, I'm not going to allow these lies to be spread on our network. Your network is a lie. Same thing with ABC, CBS, NBC. Same thing with MSNBC. Same thing with all of them. These networks have pushed the propaganda in this country right to the edge. They've told you that Donald Trump wants to execute his political opponents. That he's worse than Hitler. He's Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini combined. The more you hate Trump, the more you're promoted in these media corporations. Just the truth. These are the people who will be watching for any opportunity, any squint, any sweat bead, any misstatement to seize and to claim that Joe Biden has won. The New York Times has 29 fact checkers, but they aren't fact checkers. The New York Times hired hitmen and women. And how can the New York Times, as I alluded to last night, be fact-checking anybody? When the New York Times chief correspondent in Moscow was a Stalin mouthpiece for 12 years and covered up the slaughter of the Ukrainians in 1932. How can the New York Times be fact-checking anybody? When there have been multiple books written, including mine, pointing out that the New York Times intentionally covered up the Holocaust. And that the New York Times chief correspondent in Berlin was a Hitler acolyte. Can you imagine? And this same New York Times, in the 1950s, helped install the vicious, mass-murdering communist Fidel Castro in Cuba. The same New York Times that uses data from Hamas. Hamas, blood libels to try and destroy the state of Israel. We're going to rely on the New York Times fact checkers. We're going to rely on CNN to do a good job. We're going to rely on any of these woke, Democrat, radical left corporations for actual news. For objective analysis? No. Even the Washington Post today had to point something out. A new measure of America's deep distrust of the media. A new measure. It is a grim time to be a member of the news media, they write, like they're victims. Many people, though presumably few here at the Washington Post, see this as karma, if not good news. They view the media as having failed at its basic task of informing the public. That sentiment is particularly acute in the realm of political coverage. Donald Trump has spent nearly a decade excoriating the press for its alleged failings that tend to correspond to coverage of his false statements. See, they do it right to the end. Now, that's not why you're hated. You're hated because you're the Tusk. You're the Pravda of America. You're the Al Jazeera of America. But while Trump's rhetoric is often among the most virulent, this isn't solely downstream from Trump. In recent years, there's been particularly acute criticism from the left as well. Oh, okay, well then it's very important. Swing state polling from the Post and the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University found that only 3 in 10 residents of 6 of the most important states in this year's presidential election trust that the media will fairly and accurately report political news. 7 in 10 indicated that they had not much trust in that occurring or that they had no trust at all. As you might expect, this lack of trust is more pronounced on the political right. And why would you expect that? because it's accurate. Only 13% of white evangelical Protestants in those states indicated that they had trust in the media to fairly report on politics. White? What does it matter if they're white? I suspect many blacks feel the same way about the American media. The post-Shar poll determined that only a handful of groups, Democrats, those who listen to NPR, National Public Radio, those who view President Biden's re-election bid with satisfaction, had more trust than distrust in the media. Well, of course. The media play to the Democrats. The media play to the Marxist left. They play to the Marxists, the Islamists, the Democrat Party, and Biden. And so, of course, those people are far more supportive of the media. Whereas the rest of us, eyes wide open, ears wide open, we know what we're dealing with here. State-run media. When the Democrats are in power, that's what we're dealing with. And that's what we'll be dealing with tonight. And that's what we'll be dealing with after the debate. But never fear, America. Mark is here.